Imagine stepping onto your land at dawn, the morning frost crunching sharply beneath your work boots, and hearing a deep, guttural roar echoing across the valley like a cold-starting heavy tractor engine. To the seasoned producer, geese are never simple pond ornaments or noisy backyard pets for the kids to chase around. They are heavy biological machinery, relentless territorial watchmen, and a dense, highly rustic source of protein anchoring your entire pasture-based system. But when you decide to leave the minor leagues behind and dive headfirst into breeding massive tonnage waterfowl, the pasture shrinks down to a high-stakes clash of absolute titans. On one side, you have the French colossus, a walking fortress engineered through centuries of selection to hoard pure mass. On the exact opposite end, you face the German White Phantom, a rapid assault siege unit packed with a volcanic temper and explosive growth capabilities. Today we are tearing apart their skeletal structure, foraging mechanics, and raw field data to define exactly who the undisputed king of the heavyweight waterfowl division truly is. Discover which giant actually deserves your time, your precious forage, and your hard-earned farm investment. Let's begin. Number 1. The Walking Fortress of France, the Toulouse Powerhouse. The Toulouse Goose is a biological siege tank designed through generations of intense selection for one unforgiving purpose: the massive accumulation of weight and energy reserves. Originating from the lush agricultural plains of southern France, this titan boasts an unmistakable profile, featuring a massive hanging dewlap, a deep keel that practically sweeps the mud off the barnyard floor, and an imposing chassis radiating pure gravity. Flock sires easily reach a staggering 26.5 pounds in their prime, while the maternal base settles comfortably around the 20-pound mark. This extreme anatomical frame dictates every single aspect of their physical management on your homestead. You cannot force a Toulouse to scale steep hills or forage across rugged terrain, because their load-bearing joints are simply not built for poultry mountaineering. They demand flat, easily accessible pastures and a facility strategy that prevents abrasive chest injuries from constant friction against hard ground. These are slow, deliberate movers, which is an absolute blessing for your perimeter fencing, but a massive red flag regarding heavy predator pressure. A swift fox or a stray dog will find the Toulouse an easy target, as it lacks the aerobic engine to mount a fast escape, forcing the experienced farmer to establish impenetrable defensive barriers around their grazing zones. Their temperament is famously docile and easygoing, making them a fantastic choice for family-run operations, where the risk of animal strikes must be kept to an absolute minimum. However, that exact same placid nature hides severe technical challenges when you enter the breeding season. Because of their immense wingspan and extremely low-hanging underbelly, successful mating on dry land is an almost impossible mission that frequently results in unfertilized eggs or physical injuries to the breeding females. For the Toulouse genetics to flow and your hatch rates to remain strong, the breeder must provide deep water troughs or dedicated mating ponds where neutral buoyancy counteracts the crushing weight of the heavy male. On the veterinary front, their natural biological drive to store fat makes them extremely susceptible to hepatic breakdown and sudden heart failure if you feed them high-energy grains outside the strict finishing season. This is a heavyweight giant that requires an eagle eye. You must keep them heavy enough to honor their imposing breed standard, but agile enough so their heart can pump blood through that mountain of flesh without collapsing during the suffocating summer heat waves. Number 2. The Northern Siege Unit, the Embden Infantry. If the Toulouse is a slow, defensive tank, the Embden Goose operates as a rapid assault armored vehicle packed with dense muscle and an attitude demanding immediate respect in every corner of the barnyard. Clad in immaculate white armor and sporting piercing blue eyes and bright orange beaks, these German titans stand with a tall, vertical posture, functioning as an always-on early warning radar system. They reach the same massive 26.5-pound finish line, but they distribute that tonnage in a completely different mechanical fashion. The Embden is tight, athletic, and lacks the hanging fat lobes, granting them a ground speed and a foraging lethality that leaves the French giant choking in the dust. They are grass-devouring machines actively patrolling the perimeter, covering vast expanses of acreage and shredding rough pasture with unforgiving efficiency. Their physical build turns them into exceptional bodyguards. An Embden gander will never stand by passively while a threat approaches his flock. He will lower his neck, deploy a massive wingspan, and charge like a runaway freight train against coyotes, stray dogs, and even the homesteader who crosses the line into his territory during the breeding months. That protective aggression is a double-edged sword the experienced farmer must manage with a firm hand. Stepping into the Embden enclosure requires thick leather boots and a strict rule of never turning your back, lowering their appeal if you need a passive breed for a farm with small children running around. In exchange for that pure gunpowder temperament, they hand you a fertility rate and hybrid vigor that completely crushes the competition. Their athletic biomechanics allow them to copulate with overwhelming success on solid, dry ground, entirely eliminating the logistical headache of building and maintaining artificial mating ponds. Their hatch rates are incredibly strong, and the goslings hit the ground with a wild survival instinct, growing at an exponential pace that shrinks the vulnerability window against aerial predators. Nutritionally speaking, they resist lethal obesity with ease, channeling the protein from the pasture directly into the formation of a lean, dense, and premium-grade meat carcass. On the battlefield of profit margins, the Embden requires less water infrastructure, fewer reproductive rescue interventions, and defends its feed bucket with the ferocity of a frontline soldier. Number 3. The Cellulose Shredder. Feed conversion in rustic grazing. To truly understand the financial engine of breeding heavyweight geese, you have to treat them like miniature cattle. Their digestive tract is perfectly optimized to ferment cellulose and extract deep nutrition from tough forage, turning cheap weeds into high-value protein. This is the exact arena where the clash between the Toulouse and the Embden is decided on your operational spreadsheet. The Toulouse giant, operating with a metabolism geared toward holding reserves, demands soft, succulent, and highly digestible pasture. If you force this breed to clear a rugged plot full of fibrous weeds and woody stems, their growth curve will nosedive, and you will be forced to subsidize their diet with expensive bags of 16% protein commercial feed just to build out that massive skeletal frame. They thrive on thick green carpets of clover and alfalfa, where they can take a single step, gorge themselves, and sit down to process the fuel. This absolute dependence on premium-grade forage invariably drives up the cost per pound of meat in any operation lacking pristine grazing lands. In sharp contrast, the Toulouse Goose operates as a ruthless pasture mercenary. Their natural drive pushes them to attack tough stems, shallow roots, and marginal weeds that the Toulouse would simply ignore. A flock of Embdens deployed in an intensive rotational grazing system acts like a precision biological brush hog, clearing the land with unmatched efficiency while demanding a tiny fraction of supplemental grain. They will easily consume up to 2.2 pounds of fresh forage a day, fueling their muscular growth through the raw conversion of the cheapest and most abundant resources on your property. However, this high-octane activity level means they burn through calories at an astonishing rate. The hidden danger with the Embden on severely depleted pastures is that their high-performance bodies will start to cannibalize their own muscle reserves if the grass lacks basic nitrogen and core minerals. The astute breeder deploys the Embden to disrupt the soil during the initial rotations, harnessing their jaw strength and weather resistance to transform harsh ground into productive fields, securing a feed independence that financially bulletproofs the entire operation. Number 4. The Frontline Nursery, Maternal Aptitude and Reproductive Machinery. Securing the next generation turns the maternity ward into a high-stakes minefield, where raw instinct clashes violently against the unbreakable physical laws of body weight. The swift Embden Goose immediately assumes the unforgiving role of a stepwolf, transforming into a fierce and uncompromising mother who will construct a heavily fortified nest right at ground level and defend it with lethal intent against any passing shadow. Her nesting facilities require total strategic isolation and solid visual barricades to prevent the female from draining her core energy by wildly attacking the perimeter wire every single time she detects unusual movement. They act as high-yield biological incubators and relentless protectors in hostile environments. On the opposite end of the spectrum, the colossal Toulouse female embodies the heavy and clumsy maternal base. Although her lethargic temperament makes her exceptionally docile in the quiet intimacy of her nesting area, her sheer body mass represents a direct and constant mechanical threat to her very own offspring. If the seasoned producer does not design unusually wide nest boxes, built strictly at ground level and packed with a remarkably deep, soft straw bed, the overwhelming risk of her accidentally crushing her own eggs while shifting weight becomes a logistical nightmare that will drastically sink your flock replacement rates. In the harsh analysis of raw field metrics, the short reproductive season exposes intense financial contrasts in your operation. A fully mature Embden female will consistently hand you between 30 and 45 massive eggs per year, easily outperforming the 20 to 30 eggs that a pure Toulouse line barely manages to scrape together. Both breeds demand strict rations featuring an 18% protein profile and concentrated spikes of highly assimilable calcium to sustain the tremendous physical toll of assembling eggs that easily tip the scales at 6.3 ounces. However, the absolute maximum technical alert is triggered the moment you step inside the artificial incubation room. The giant eggs of the Toulouse possess exceptionally thick and highly porous shells, demanding military-grade calibration of your thermal machines, forcing humidity parameters to hover precisely between 65 and 70%, paired with rigorous daily cooling and manual misting protocols. Ignoring this precise choreography will inevitably spark massive embryonic suffocation just days before the hatch. Furthermore, due to the crushing pelvic strain of pushing out these giant eggs, Toulouse females suffer from a severely high rate of fatal prolapses if they enter the laying season carrying extreme abdominal fat. Number 5. The thermal armor. Climate resistance and extreme adaptation. Pushing these heavyweights to the absolute limit of their capabilities means throwing them against the most unforgiving weather patterns. And this is exactly where the architecture of their feathering hands down the harsh sentence of who thrives and who freezes in the dirt. The muscular Embden goose is an all-terrain armored vehicle strategically equipped for intense winter combat. Their pure white plumage is incredibly tight and dense, creating an astonishing biological hydrophobic shield that instantly repels freezing rain, aggressive sleet, and bone-chilling wind. A robust flock of Embden breeders can easily weather wild blizzards by sleeping directly on top of the hard snow without skipping a beat, proving a thermal toughness that demands minimal rustic shelters featuring nothing more than a simple roof. In stark contrast, the slow Toulouse giant wears a loose, sagging feather coat that lacks the necessary biological surface tension to effectively repel environmental moisture. Their massive, low-hanging underbelly acts dangerously like a giant walking sponge, absorbing the freezing mud straight from the pastures. Managing the heavy Toulouse in wet, dark, and frigid climates financially corners you into building enormous, bone-dry pavilions, totally isolated from the wind, with thick, warm straw beds that must be religiously swapped out every single dawn. If cold moisture penetrates their loose plumage and hits bare skin, this colossus will bleed out core body heat in record time, exposing their basal joints to frostbite and structural ruin. When the relentless weather pendulum swings toward the suffocating summer months, the entire landscape flips, and the sanitary dangers exact an overwhelming death toll. Both formidable breeds suffer intensely once the thermometer pushes past 86 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer, but the bulky Toulouse faces an imminent risk of total cardiovascular collapse. Being a machine biologically engineered to hoard thick layers of subcutaneous fat, it finds it mechanically impossible to dissipate the intense internal heat radiating from its massive pectorals. As the flock manager, you are forced to deploy immediate emergency protocols, providing massive deep shade structures, high-volume troughs filled with perpetually fresh water, and strictly shifting their foraging hours exclusively to the cool shadows of dawn, forcing a Toulouse to forage under the midday sun hands down an immediate death sentence via explosive heat stroke. The Embden, boasting a much leaner muscle mass, manages to ventilate its core temperature with notable efficiency. The most critical sanitary alert for these birds in swampy, hot, and waterlogged soils is the dreaded severe Pododermatitis, a condition that proves crippling for heavy waterfowl. The constant downward pressure of their colossal 26.5 pounds crushing against softened footpads creates deep fissures that invite aggressive manure-borne bacteria, sparking rapid systemic infections that will flatline your production overnight. Number 6. The Master Hybridization Gear, the Strategic F1 Cross. For the producer who flat-out refuses to choose between the rapid strike of an armored vehicle and the massive tonnage of a walking fortress, the field offers a hidden game-changer, the biological magic of hybrid vigor. By crossing a highly aggressive Embden flock sire with massive Toulouse females, you construct the ultimate heavy machinery, an F1 goose that inherits the tight thermal armor from the German bloodline, easily repelling night frosts that would break a purebred bird. Their temperament strikes a perfect balance for any active homestead. It successfully deactivates the explosive, highly territorial trigger of the Embden, but injects just enough locomotive vitality to keep the hybrid flock actively patrolling the acreage. On the facility management side, this strategic cross takes an enormous amount of financial pressure off the breeder. These robust hybrids do not demand deep mating ponds to keep their heavy joints healthy and fertile, adapting with astonishing ease to well-drained dirt pens and simple rustic shelters, operating every single day, working tirelessly, as peaceful yet highly vigilant watchmen across your property. On the nutritional front lines, this crossbred battalion operates as a high-powered forage vacuum, perfectly merging the relentless grazing instinct of the Embden with the Toulouse's innate ability to pack away high-octane energy reserves. When you turn them loose into fall stubble packed with sweet corn drop and mature native grasses, they transform that rustic diet into imposing frames that effortlessly break the 22-pound live weight barrier. This is the exact arena where they achieve natural domination in the realm of premium pâtés and high-value gourmet livers. Their F1 genetics unlock a generous hepatic accumulation through simple, abundant free-choice feeding, handing you an exceptionally valuable end product without ever relying on the highly controversial industrial practices of forced feeding. You hold highly ethical, top-tier profitability right in your hands. However, their extreme feeding velocity triggers a non-negotiable sanitary alert out in the field. Because of the sheer speed and intensity with which they inhale their grain rations, the experienced farmer must supply large quantities of coarse granite grit alongside perpetually fresh water, preventing a fatal crop impaction from shutting down the engine of your best investment in a matter of hours. In the unforgiving chess match of pasture management, choosing between these biological powerhouses depends entirely on your specific topography and end goals. The massive Toulouse giant is a slow-burning luxury with an incredibly docile nature. It demands pristine, flat green plains, mandatory water infrastructure, and clinical precision in the incubation room. It stands as a specialized investment designed for the patient breeder looking to capitalize on premium fat reserves, while carefully managing the heavy risks of extreme animal obesity in a highly controlled environment. On the flip side, the F1 Cross and the pure Embden represent shock infantry and raw self-sufficiency, conquering rough terrain and hitting massive weights at lightning speed. Let me know down in the comments which of these varieties makes the most sense for your setup. If you got some value out of this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up so we can keep bringing you practical homesteading advice. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.